Hi, Doc Martin here. While short-term stress can be energizing and helpful, long-term chronic stress can be debilitating. Learning how to manage your stress and help the individual you support manage their stress is very, very important. In this video, I'm going to talk about the second step in the four-step process of stress management that can be helpful both for the person you support and for yourself. The four steps are 1. Reframe. 2. Recognize. 3. Reduce. And 4. Recharge. In the last video, I talked about reframing challenging behaviors as stress-related behaviors. What follows is a quick recap of the concept. Step 1 involves reframing how you see an individual, child, adolescent, or adult who is stressed, or how you see yourself when you are stressed. Once you start reframing, you see differently. You ask different questions. Learning to reframe misbehavior as stress behavior is foundational. When you learn to read the signs of stress behavior, you consider behavior as a form of communication, telling you the person you support needs your help, not your judgment. The same is true for your stress. Being a parent or support provider can be very stressful. And many times, you blame yourself for not being good enough. I'm not a good enough parent. I'm not a good enough support provider. You may think, I suck as a parent. I suck as a provider. Now is the time for you to notice your negative thoughts and behaviors as stress-related behaviors. For example, not being able to get a good night's sleep or being very irritable and tired during the day may well be due to the fact that you have low energy and high tension and lots of stress. So what can you do? Just follow the four-step process of stress management. And step 1 is reframe your behaviors and their behaviors as stress behavior. Now it's time to look at step 2, recognize the stressors. But before I go into step 2, if you like what I'm saying, please hit the like button and the subscribe button. I would really appreciate it. So back to step 3, recognize the stressors. You need to do detective work, sleuthing to uncover stressors by looking for obvious ones and hidden ones. So how do you do this? Do an in-the-moment stress scan as part of your detective work. When either the person you support or you yourself are feeling stressed, take a pause and ask, why now? To help you be a better detective and to understand why now, I want to go over with you the stress response. But let's now call it the distress response. I want to distinguish between stress and distress so that you can learn how to help both you and the person you support avoid chronic distress. For the purposes of this discussion, stress occurs anytime the demands of the immediate environment tax a person's processing abilities, but do not overwhelm them. The person can meet the demands, but this drains his or her energy. What you need to avoid is overwhelming stress and what I'm now calling distress. Whereas stress occurs when the processing demands tax our capabilities, distress occurs when the demands are greater than our abilities and outweigh and overwhelm our skills. When the demands are too fast, too much, too difficult for us or the person you support to process, they go beyond extending your abilities to overwhelming your capacities, often flooding you or the person you support with fear and panic and setting off a rush of stress chemicals like cortisol and adrenaline. When the demands overload you or the person you support, stress becomes distress. In distress, the brain feels threatened, insecure, and anxious. Emotions overwhelm you, and the panic, fight, or flight sets in. The brain becomes defensive and reactive to the threatening demands, with emotions overpowering thought and reason. It is when threatening demands become distressful that damage can occur to our nervous system. Remember, stress is inevitable, but most distress can be avoided. So how do we identify distress? How do we identify those demands that trigger our stress response and overwhelm us and the person you support? You become a stress detective. Now there are two parts to being a stress detective. Part one is you need to identify the stressors in both you and in the person you support. Part two is to then look for patterns. Let's start by giving a brief overview in part one of the common stressors for parents and support providers. There are family stressors. Could be marital difficulties, problems with the child with challenging behaviors. There are job-related stressors, like supervisor or coworker problems. There are personal stressors, like poor health and no time for yourself. Social stressors can include feeling left out of a group or an argument with a friend. Environmental stressors could be crime in the neighborhood or too much traffic. Financial stress is like not enough money to pay the bills or poor credit. Now, this is just a sampling of general stressors. I have a complete checklist available for free for you to download on the link below. Now, let's look at potential stressors for the person you support. I do a little bit of different approach on how we look at their stressors. And what I want to do is look at the 4 stress domains: biological, emotional, cognitive, and social. To help you get focused on each domain, I'm going to give a few examples of stress triggers that may play a role in the stress of the person with intense emotions and challenging behaviors. Biological triggers. Now, these are the most basic and need to be addressed first. First, rule off medical issues. It could be pain, gastrointestinal problems, earaches, toothaches, etc. Then look at sensory sensitivities, sleep problems, poor eating habits, and lack of exercise. Next up are the emotional triggers. Loneliness, anxiety, embarrassment, anger, or just to name a few of them. Some of the cognitive triggers include difficult tasks, information overload, transitions especially difficult. Social triggers many times are poor communication skills, being teased or bullied, lack of friends. Now, again, this is just a short sample of the stressors. I have a much more detailed checklist of potential stressors, one checklist for you that identifies general stressors, and one checklist that is much more specific, listing potential stressors for the person you support. Please download them and fill them out before you do the next step, which I'm going to explain right now, but make sure you fill them out, and then you can really go to part 2, which is, after you've identified the stressors, look for patterns. It might be, is the person you support typically upset after doing something? Or she agitated after playing a video game? Or spending time with a particular friend? Or having a high caffeine sugary drink? Is there a particular time of the day when he or she seems either to have too much energy or too little energy? For example, one child, it may be when they get home from school and walk in the door. The day was so taxing they're completely stressed out. Another person might have a meltdown just before bedtime. Ask yourself, are there times of the day or particular situations when the person you support is less patient, highly sensitive, and easily upset? Now continue to be a stress detective. Start first with the biological domain: sleep, eating, exercise, and health problems. It could be a combination of stressors: poor sleep, missed breakfast, teased on the bus on the way out to school. all may combine and lead to major meltdowns later in the day when the energy bank is depleted. So another question to ask yourself is, were there anything different about the days or times when things went smoothly? What stressors were absent on these days? Your goal is to be a stress detective and recognize the stressors and the patterns. Then what you want to do is reduce the stressors once they've been recognized. And that's the topic for the next video. But for now, I have 2 questions for you. As I've already said, I made 2 stressor checklists available for you. They're free to download. See the link below. One for you and one for the person you support. My first question is, did you download them and fill them out? If not, please do so. And then, after you fill them out, have you identified the important stressors and stress-related patterns both in your life and in the person you support's life? It's important to recognize the stressors as part of my 4-part stress management program. Reframe, recognize, which we just talked about today, then reduce and recharge. Now, in the next video, I'll go over the next step, step 3, how to reduce the stressors. Don't forget, if you're interested in everything I'm talking about, to hit the like and subscribe buttons and turn on that little bell next to subscribe so that you don't miss out on any of my uploads, because I know you're going to love them. This channel is being designed especially for you. Take a look at my online Moving Beyond Meltdowns Academy. It has 2 programs for you, a mindfulness program and a healthy eating program. They're designed especially for you, the support provider. Also, take a look at my Healthy Lifestyle Learning Academy, designed for people with developmental disabilities, with programs to be done with the help of their support provider. Both links are down below. Thanks for watching, and please leave any comments you might have or any suggestions for topics you'd like to see covered. I'd really appreciate that. So see you next time, and just keep on trucking.